You just need a shallow angle of attack because that is the key to the puzzle. Is the ground very hard like today, or is the ground very soft? After a heavy rain, then you need a shallow angle of attack. If you're in the bunker, then you need a shallow angle of attack. And you can always achieve a shallow angle of attack very, very simply if you use too little. A very warm welcome back to my new golf video. Today we're going to talk about the short game. Because when I started as a golf pro 16 years ago, I had a terrible short game. Whether it was chipping, pitching, or bunker shots, it was all a catastrophe. And all of that just because I had the wrong technique. However, no pro could tell me what I was doing wrong. And that's why I had to go on the search myself. And today I'm going to reveal my short game secrets to you. There aren't many, but if you follow these few secrets, then you'll really perform around the green in the future. We're starting off here on a par 5. It's supposed to be the shallow, dependable fairway finder, really. Shallow? Definitely. Fairway? Unfortunately not. Shot 2 5 wood. And with that said, I can now finally get started with the topic of the short game. Because those were exactly my biggest fear shots. I have about 40 meters or 50 yards here, and I almost never succeeded with this shot. Why? Because my angle of attack was simply much too steep. What is the angle of attack? The angle of attack is the path of the club to the ball. And if you have a very, very steep angle of attack, where the club swings from top to bottom, then you're really forced to work very, very precisely regarding the low point. And if you're just a little bit to the right of the ball as a right-handed golfer, then a real disaster comes out. That means the shot will then be an absolute catastrophe. It's much, much better to work with a shallow angle of attack. What does a shallow angle of attack mean? A shallow angle of attack means that your club swings in very much from the side, so less from above towards the ball. And in case you're wondering why the camera angle has changed a bit, well, I might put the video in the outtakes where the camera falls over because of the relatively strong wind today. So back to the topic of the short game. It just takes a shallow angle of attack because that's the key to the whole thing. Is the ground very hard like today, or is the ground very soft after a heavy rain? Then you need a shallow angle of attack. If you're in the bunker, then you need a shallow angle of attack. And you can always achieve a shallow angle of attack very, very simply if you work with as few angles as possible. As soon as you hinge the club in the short game, you have to release that angle before you hit the ball, because otherwise your club will dig in. And by digging in, you're forced to control the low point extremely well. How do you control your low point in general? Quite simply. You just go ahead and make sure that your sternum, your breastbone, is positioned to the left of the ball. You can do that on the one hand by bringing your weight a bit to the left, to 60 to about 70%, or by placing the ball a bit to the right. Or you just do both to be doubly sure. So, what do I recommend for you in the short game? I recommend a good setup where your ball is slightly right of center, where your weight is on the left. Why? So that your sternum lands to the left of the ball, because your sternum is responsible for where your club touches the ground. And the third and perhaps most important point, which you've probably never heard before, because in 30 years of golf I've never heard it from anyone but myself, is a shallow angle of attack. Just try to control the radius. Try to make sure that your club is hinged as little as possible in the short game. What is the advantage of angles in general? Well, probably that you can generate club head speed with them. But in the short game, you absolutely don't need any club head speed. It's all about low point control. And you'll get low point control when you find the right contact with the ground by having the right angle of attack. So, long story short, it's really about making sure your club moves as laterally as possible toward the ball. And that in turn means having a shallow angle of attack and a large radius. That's the magic word in the short game. And since I've been doing that for years now, by the way, I've had absolutely no problems with my short game, and especially not with shots like these. Those used to be the shots I dreaded most because I was way too steep here and my divots were about this big. As big as a Wiener Schnitzel, you could say. And normally none of that happens to me anymore. Do I still make a mistake in the short game every now and then? Of course, I still make mistakes in the short game sometimes because I'm no golf god either. And I don't want to present myself as a golf god here, but I just want to show you the easiest way to play good golf. Please write down in the comments right now, what's your biggest struggle in the short game? Do you hit thin and fat shots like most people? Is your angle of attack too steep? What are your problems? Because I'd be interested to know. Okay, shot 3. And I'm focusing on a good setup and as little angle as possible. And with that, I went from being a short game loser to a relatively decent player around the green. You can clearly see here I didn't take a deep divot. My angle of attack was perfect. And all that, even though it's a steep uphill lie here. Because the steeper the uphill slope, the higher the risk of getting stuck. And there's the first birdie of the day. One thing that should never be forgotten is this, repairing pitch marks. The next hole is a par 3, but I'm really totally relaxed. Why? Because I know that I have a decent short game. I control the low point with the position of my sternum, and I control the radius and thus the angle of attack. And consequently, the ground contact. And if you can do that, it's not much, it's really not much, then you'll perform great around the green. It's so simple. But I actually didn't know it for several years, maybe even decades. And like I said, no golf pro was able to help me. Please write in the comments below or maybe link a video if you find one, if you know a golf pro who teaches exactly this kind of short game. One more thing perhaps, if your ball is in the rough, then you naturally need a steeper angle of attack. But I would ask you to solve all of that purely through the ball position. You still don't need to hinge much more, even if that were my strength. No, because that makes your club ultra steep. And I don't want that, even in the rough. Why? Because if your club becomes ultra steep, then you're going to lose a lot of loft. That means your sand wedge will behave like an 8-iron or a 7-iron. And you might make clean contact with the ball, yes, but you'll never control it on the green. That means even if your ball is in the rough, in the high grass, you play it a bit further from the right foot. Yes, that's important to make the angle of attack a bit steeper. But still, I'd ask you to work with relatively little hinge to keep the radius constant. So, par 3, nothing can happen to me because I have a functional short game. I have a pitching wedge in my hand, play the ball a bit off the right foot, and will play it in relatively flat. Yes, the direction is excellent. And the ball is in the bunker. World class. That fits perfectly with today's topic. So, what's required in the bunker? Well, it's quite simple. Low point control. On one hand, I want to hit the sand just before the ball. That's why I place my sternum at ball height. And on the other hand, I don't want the club to dig in too much. And that's why I have to make sure to work with as little hinge as possible. I have a 60-degree lob wedge in my hand. And that should actually fit perfectly here now. I'm lining up square, meaning parallel to the ball target line. In the retro bunker shot, you stood a bit open. That, in turn, influenced the angle of attack. That tends to make you steeper because you come at the ball more from the outside. So I'd like to avoid that as well, please. I'm still opening the club face and my ball still won't go to the right. Why? Because my ball has no direct contact with the club face. And the club face is only responsible for the starting direction with all other clubs. So I'm lining up square and making sure my sternum is at ball height and that I work with as little hinge as possible. Not a bad result, I would say. I'll take you along. I'll show you right now where the ball is lying. That was, I would say, played quite decently. What are the keywords here? The keywords are control of the angle of attack and control of the swing arc height by working with minimal angles. Now I just have to sink this thing for par. And with this par, I'd like to thank you very much for watching. please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And to click on the bell, because that's the only way you'll be notified when a new video is online. And if you've already tried all this, if you know that you have your low point under control by having your sternum correctly positioned and by having your radius right, then please give me a sign and press the thumbs up symbol.